On a flat slab of dolomite rock in eastern Missouri, someone carved a picture of a man with a bird's head over 1,000 years ago, and we still cannot say for certain what it means. Around it are carved footprints, arrows, turkey tracks, mace shapes, and geometric patterns pecked into solid stone with tools made of harder rock. They were made by native people somewhere between roughly 1,000 and 1,600 years ago, in the same cultural world that built the enormous mound city of Cahokia across the river. Archaeologists have studied these carvings for a century. They can tell you how they were made, roughly when, and by whom. What they still cannot fully tell you is what they were saying. The specific meaning of many of the symbols is genuinely, honestly unknown. That is the real mystery of the Ozarks. Not invented, not exaggerated. The hills are covered in carvings and paintings left by people who lived here for over 10,000 years, and a great deal of what they were trying to communicate has never been decoded. Let's start with what these carvings actually are, because there is a lot of nonsense online about them, and the truth is more interesting than the nonsense. Archaeologists split ancient rock art into two kinds. Petroglyphs are carved, pecked or scratched into the rock. Pictographs are painted, usually with red pigment made from hematite, a natural iron mineral, or black made from manganese, mixed with animal fat to make it stick. The Ozarks region, across southern Missouri and northern Arkansas, holds one of the richest concentrations of this rock art in the eastern half of the United States. There are thousands of documented sites, and I want to be clear about something up front, because it matters. For a long time, early archaeologists told a story about a mysterious vanished race they called the Ozark Bluff Dwellers, a primitive, isolated people who supposedly lived in the caves and then disappeared. That story is false. Modern archaeology has thoroughly dismantled it. The people who made these carvings were Native Americans, ancestors and relatives of nations who are still here today, the Osage, the Quapaw, and others. They did not vanish. They were not primitive. The bluff shelters where their artifacts survived were seasonal camps and ceremonial sites, not their whole world. So this is not a story about a lost civilization that shouldn't exist. It is a story about a real and sophisticated people whose written language of symbols we have only partly learned to read. If that distinction matters to you, and it should, do me a favor and tap the like button. It is the single biggest signal that tells YouTube to put this in front of more people. That's the only ask for now. The first place is Washington State Park, on the eastern edge of the Ozarks in Washington County. This site holds one of the largest concentrations of petroglyphs in Missouri, carvings pecked into flat dolomite outcrops, believed to have been made between about 1000 and 1600 CE by people connected to the Mississippian culture that built Cahokia. The carvings include human figures, arrows, footprints, turkey tracks, and a symbol archaeologists associate with a spiritual world, motifs tied to the southeastern ceremonial complex, a religious system that spread across much of the ancient southeast. Researchers believe this was a ceremonial ground, a sacred place. Many of the individual symbols have plausible interpretations, but the full meaning of the arrangement, why these symbols, in this place, in this order, remains a genuine open question. The second place is the Madden Creek site and the cluster of rock art sites through the eastern Ozarks that scholars have spent decades cataloging. Carol Diaz Granados and James Duncan, two of the leading researchers on Missouri rock art, mapped 58 major recurring symbols across the state and spent years cross-referencing them with the oral traditions and languages of the native nations descended from these people. Their work connected many of the images to figures in native cosmology: the great serpent of the underworld, the birdman of the upper world, the forces that ancient people believed governed life and death. This is careful, respectful scholarship, and it recovered a great deal. But even the researchers who have gone furthest are clear that they are reading fragments of a symbolic language, not the whole book. There are carvings whose meaning has simply not survived. What makes their work remarkable is the method. Instead of guessing, they treated the symbols as data, mapping where each one appeared and comparing the patterns against the recorded oral traditions of Siouan-speaking nations descended from these ancient people. That approach turned wild speculation into disciplined interpretation. It is the difference between a documentary that respects the people it describes and one that turns their sacred marks into a circus. And even done right, With every tool available, large portions of the record stay dark. The third place is Thousand Hills State Park in northern Missouri, just at the edge of the Ozarks region, where petroglyphs left more than 1,500 years ago are protected under an interpretive shelter. The carvings here are older than those at Washington State Park, made by earlier Woodland period people. Snakes, deer, human figures, and abstract shapes appear on the rock. The interpretive signs tell visitors honestly that while some images seem clear, others resist explanation entirely. Standing in front of them, you are looking at a message that someone took great effort to leave, meant to last, and it has lasted. But the person it was meant for is 15 centuries gone, and the meaning went with them. The fourth place is not carved but painted, and it is the harder mystery. Deep in bluff shelters across the Ozarks, protected from rain by overhanging rock, there are pictographs painted in red and black, some of them faded almost to nothing, some remarkably intact. Because paint is fragile, the ones that survive are precious, and each one is a direct trace of a human hand from 1,000 or more years ago. Some show recognizable things, animals, human figures, weapons. Others are purely abstract, geometric, and those are the ones nobody can read. Were they records of events? Star maps? Territory markers? Prayers? The honest scholarly answer is that for many of them, we do not know, and we may never know. The pigments themselves tell part of the story. The red comes from hematite, an iron ore the artists sometimes mine directly from the bluff face, grinding it to powder and binding it with fat. The black comes from manganese. These were not casual materials. They had to be sourced, processed, and prepared, which means the act of painting was planned and purposeful. In a few shelters, the paint has lasted 1,000 years, or more precisely because the overhang kept the rain off. One good storm, one collapse, one careless visitor with a can of spray paint, and an irreplaceable message from the deep past is gone forever. The fifth place is Onondaga Cave, and it reframes the whole subject. Onondaga is one of the most beautiful caves in Missouri, a national natural landmark full of towering formations. But it is also recognized by the Osage Nation as a sacred site, one of many in Missouri. This is the crucial point that the ancient mystery videos usually miss entirely. These are not the ruins of a dead and gone people. They are the heritage of living nations. The Osage were forced out of Missouri in the 1800s, pushed to Kansas and then Oklahoma, but they did not disappear, and these places remain sacred to them. When we call these carvings unexplained, what we often mean is that the knowledge was deliberately taken from the people who held it, through removal and cultural destruction. Some of the mystery is real antiquity. Some of it is a wound. It is worth sitting with that for a moment. When a documentary calls something ancient and unexplained, it can make the past sound like a puzzle with no owner, free for anyone to guess at. But these carvings have owners. The Osage Nation, now headquartered in Oklahoma, traces its heritage directly to the people who lived in and moved through these hills, and they have been clear that Missouri is full of places still sacred to them. Treating their heritage as a spooky mystery, or worse, as evidence of aliens or lost white civilizations, is not just bad history. It is theft repeated, taking the meaning of a people's sacred marks the same way their land was taken. The sixth place is the broad pattern the researchers found when they mapped everything together, and it is genuinely strange in the best way. Certain symbols cluster in certain regions and not others. Some images appear only along particular rivers. The distribution suggests boundaries, that different groups may have had different symbolic traditions, almost like regional dialects of a shared visual language. Reading that map is like finding the grammar of a language without a dictionary. You can see there is structure, rule, and intention. You can see it meant something specific. You just cannot fully translate it, and the people who could are the ones whose ancestors were driven out. The seventh and final place is the one that should stay with you, the sheer scale of what is out there and undocumented. Archaeologists have identified thousands of rock art and shelter sites across the Ozarks, and they are confident that many more exist, unrecorded, on private land and in remote hollows, some known only to the families who own the ground. Every year, a few more are found. Some are damaged or destroyed before anyone with training ever sees them, worn away by weather, defaced, or bulldozed by people who had no idea what they were looking at. The Ozarks is quietly holding one of the great open archives of ancient North America, scattered across its bluffs and creek beds, and it is disappearing, one carving at a time. So here is the truth, without the hype. There are no impossible ruins in the Ozarks, no evidence of a lost super-civilization, no aliens. What there is happens to be more moving than any of that. Real people, skilled, spiritual, connected to a vast cultural world that stretched from these hills to the great mound cities of the Mississippi, spent thousands of years leaving marks on the stone. They meant something. Some of that meaning we have recovered through patient work and respectful partnership with their living descendants, and some of it was taken from us all when those descendants were driven from this land, leaving carvings that still speak, in a language we are only beginning to relearn. If a story like this is what you want more of from this channel, subscribe, because I have several more of these coming, and leave a comment if you have ever stood in front of ancient rock art in the Ozarks and felt the weight of it. Those comments are worth more than you know. Thank you for watching, and thank you for treating this history with the seriousness it deserves. The truth doesn't shout, it waits for you to look closer.